All right. Welcome, everybody, to the ORC Summer Success Tour. Here's some round of applause. Welcome to the get on the bus here with Jack and I. Welcome to the bus. Jack and I are driving the bus today. Jack's going to drive part of the bus some of the time today. I'm going to take the bus the rest of the time. So we'll try to keep you guys on the road on time, hit all of our stops. Want to thank everybody for coming today and remind you that today's webinar is brought to you by the letters O, R, and C. Yep, it's ORC, Organized Retail Crime, the challenge that brings us all together. We want to thank our sponsors, because without them, we wouldn't be able to bring you these quality education sessions. Please, please, please take the time to learn a little bit more about them. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about them now, but I'm hoping that you'll also go learn a little bit more about them on your own. We'll start with Pinkerton. Pinkerton, organized retail crime isn't a nuisance, it's a business problem with real speed and real consequences. That's where Pinkerton comes in, helping retailers investigate criminal networks, collect evidence, work with law enforcement, and strengthen protection across stores and supply chains. From risk assessments to protective services, Pinkerton helps turn uncertainty into action so retailers can protect people, property, and business objectives. They're built on over 175 years of experience, ready for the threats retailers face today. Learn more about Pinkerton at www.pinkerton.com. And our other sponsor today is Genetec. Genetec Inc. is a global technology company that has been transforming the physical security industry for over 25 years. The company's portfolio of solutions enables enterprises, governments, and communities around the world to secure people and assets and support operational efficiency while respecting individual privacy. Based on an open architecture and built with cybersecurity at their core, Genetec solutions can be implemented on premises, in the cloud, or in hybrid deployments. The company's flagship products, Genetec Security Center and Genetec Security Center SaaS, unify core physical security functions such as access control, video surveillance, automatic license plate recognition, or ALPR, intrusion detection, communications, and analytics. They're headquartered in Montreal, Canada. We won't hold that against them. No, just kidding. They're headquartered in Montreal, Canada. Genetec serves its customers via an extensive network of certified channel partners and consultants in over 159 countries. For more information about Genetec, they are awesome. Visit them at www.genetec.com. We also want to thank our education partner, the Loss Prevention Foundation. If you are not already certified, you should look into it. We've got two different levels of certification, the LPQ and the LPC. Loss Prevention Qualified, Loss Prevention Certified. If you are already LPC certified, attending this webinar qualifies you for 2 CEU credits towards your recertification. So please keep track of this in your profile and mark down that you were at this webinar. Visit them and learn more about certification at www.losspreventionfoundation.org. And Loss Prevention Magazine. Subscribe for free. Take it on the road with you. Get on the bus. Give you something to read while we're going stop to stop today. Subscribe for free. FREE. Subscribe for free today and every day. There's that QR code. Scan the QR code. That will get you right there. Fill out the information for the print magazine. We'll send it to your home or your office for FREE free. We'll also get you all those daily digital newsletters and all that great news and information from across the industry. So scan that QR code. I'll bring it up at the end if you didn't have your phone out, and make sure that you are subscribed to Loss Prevention Magazine. Whew! All right. I think we're ready to start the bus, Jack. All right. First stop.
Our first stop is with David Williams with CCROC. He's here to tell us all about the upcoming National Blitz. Good, welcome.
All right, thank you. First of all, I want to thank Jacques and Kevin. They do such a tremendous job bringing everybody together, bringing law enforcement with the private sector, and bringing all the ORCAs out there. They've been an amazing partner, and one of the reasons why we were able to have success with the National Blitz last year, because they help us partner with everybody out there. So we're doing it again this year. I also want to thank Ed Henkel from Walmart, who is part of CCROC and really our leader in bringing this together. This year, as people know, last year's Blitz was a great success. We had over 500, I think probably closer to 700 arrests nationwide in more than 100 jurisdictions. And we look to surpass that this year with all the great partners we have. And again, the reason why the Blitz is so important, because number one, it's an enforcement operation across the board, holding people accountable for victimizing businesses. It's an intelligence operation to find information on cases throughout the year, and it's a deterrent to show and highlight the problem of organized retail crime across the board and to get it out there. So again, I want to thank everybody for being a part of it this year. August 1st to August 9th is the Blitz year. We are, and again, you have the flexibility to have it anytime during that week that you want, an opportunity to have 2 weekends or 1 weekend. It's open to all retailers, law enforcement, and ORCAs around the country. This year, we've partnered some great partners out there who have been helping us lead it. LA ORCA has been a fantastic partner in creating the flyers and organizing events, as well as Mike Zacher in Oregon and a bunch of other partners out there have been amazing. Again, the idea is that we all know our jurisdictions better than anyone else. We're not telling anybody what they should do in their jurisdiction or how they should operate. You do it the best way you think it should be a success in your area. And then we take those successes, we share those successes, and we get them out there nationwide to put a highlight on what we're all doing together and why we're fighting this type of criminal behavior. We have had a couple of best practice kickoff meetings in which we have people who are experts around the country. Last time we had Mike from Oregon, Zacher talking. We had Chips from California talking about what they do. This time we have another meeting coming up July 8th. Jacques, I know they'll share a flyer for this during this meeting, which you can register for it. And we'll have best practices for what people have done in other jurisdictions. The Loss Prevention Research Council will be giving their best practices, as well as another law enforcement team providing theirs, I think from Florida, is going to give their presentation as well. Again, we've had over 500 people registered for these planning calls and Blitz operations. If you have any questions, if you have any issues, if you need anything, please feel free to reach out to myself or Ed Henkel. We're here to help support what you guys out there. Your success is our success, and we want to do it all together. So thank you again for having me here, and thanks to Jacques and Kevin again. Thanks to NRF, Brian Johnson, and the National District Attorney Association also for supporting this endeavor. Again, if you have any issues, if you need anything, please let us know. And thanks for all your work and everything you do every day out there.
David, thank you so much, and thanks for helping to spearhead this. I mean, it's absolutely amazing to see the progress in just this past year. I mean, you guys had such amazing success last year. We've got another ORCAs in Action update and webinar coming up in October, and cannot wait to talk about all the good things that are going to happen in August. And it's been so wonderful to see all these ORCAs getting on board and helping to support this effort. I think you said you had 500 people signed up now. I bet that number is going to go up quite a bit in the next little while here. So
well, thank you, and it's great to be working with everybody out there. Like I said, we always work in our silos, doing our thing. It's so fantastic to see what everybody's doing across the country. It's really an amazing opportunity to work together. So thank you again.
Absolutely,
it's awesome to see the partners come together too, David. Could you give us those dates one more time? You've got a best practice session coming up again, and
we got a best practice. Yeah, the next one. So we had Oregon and California gave theirs last time. At the next one on July 8th, the Loss Prevention Research Council will give some of their ideas and findings, and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement as well, FDLE, will also be giving theirs.
And then we're looking at August 1st through the 9th.
August 1st to the 9th, gear up. Yep, get ready to roll.
Yeah, and if anybody's got any questions and for whatever reason they don't have the contact information, feel free to reach out to Kevin or myself. We're happy to make sure that everybody gets that information.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everybody.
Beautiful.
Looking forward to
David,
it.
thanks so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
David.
All right, Jack, back on the bus. Let's
All
go.
right.
Next stop. And our next stop is in Georgia with GROC, Chad McManus
Georgia.
and Rachel
Got-
Murphy.
And Chad and Rachel, good afternoon. Could you just introduce yourself to everybody here as we get started?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chad McManus. I am the chair of the Georgia Retailers Organized Crime Alliance. And Jack, we actually have a slide that's going to kind of introduce both Rachel and Susan when we go through that. So I'll share here in a minute, and I'll give them the opportunity to kind of give an overview of what they do. I was hoping to be in Georgia today. I'm actually in Texas. And then Rachel and Susan are about 770 miles away from me there in lovely Cherokee County, Georgia, where it's probably as hot as it is here in Texas. So we're probably feeling the same 100-degree heat. But let me share. And are you ready for us to get rolling?
We are.
Let's go.
All right.
Sounds good.
Let me
Chad,
see.
we
if
love
we're
you. Always
working
great to see you, but we are really looking forward to meeting Rachel and Susan as well.
I know. Let me get I'm working on two screens here out of our corporate office. And so, it wouldn't be a call if we didn't have a little bit of technical issues going on here. So 1 second. Let me know when you got it.
There we go.
We got it.
All right. So kind of kicking back off, we're going to talk a little bit today about a pretty cool session and event we did a few weeks ago and about the partnership we have in Georgia with the Cherokee County Blue Ridge Judicial Circuit office up there. And we'll talk more about that here in a second. But what we're talking about today is really some training and awareness we did around just courtroom readiness through the partnership between these two organizations. And so we call it Case to Conviction. And it's really about preparing investigators in the world of organized retail crime and retail asset protection for the courtroom to help strengthen cases, improve outcomes, and really build confidence when it matters the most. So as I mentioned, where are we at here? There we are. So Chad McManus, I'm a senior manager with T-Mobile Corporate Security in the East and the South regions, leading an awesome team of asset protection managers and security ops managers. But I'm also the chair of the Georgia Retailers Organized Crime Alliance and the Loss Prevention Council, which we'll talk a little bit more about here in a minute. Got some experience in the retail asset protection world and have a couple, partnerships as well with some educational groups in Georgia where we like to talk about retail crime and ORC and asset protection. So many of you on the call, we probably met over the course of the years in these conferences. I would want to say thanks to LP Magazine and Jack and Kevin for always involving us in GROC to kind of talk about some of the cool stuff we're doing here. So I'll be quiet and I'm going to let Rachel introduce herself.
Good afternoon. I'm Rachel Murphy. I'm an assistant district attorney with the Cherokee DA's office. That's in the Blue Ridge Judicial Circuit, but not in Blue Ridge, Georgia. We are in Canton, Georgia. I've been a prosecutor for about 4 years, and I've been with the Cherokee DA's office that entire time. I am one of 4 prosecutors in our gang and organized crime unit, and as the name implies, we specialize in prosecuting those types of cases. But I specifically specialize in prosecuting organized retail theft cases. And I'm very happy to be here. And we partner often with GROC to conduct some of these trainings, one of which we're going to talk to you about today.
Definitely appreciate it, Rachel. And she didn't say this because I'm going to say it and I've got it up there, but Rachel was our 2025 GROC Prosecutor of the Year award winner. So every year at our annual conference, we give out some special recognition and she won that award last year for some great work she was doing in the state of Georgia around organized retail crime. Real quick, in case you don't know, a little bit about what we are at GROC. We've been around since about 2010. We used to be called GRA ORCA or Gray ORCA, and we transitioned to GROC several years ago. But really our main goal was just bridging the gap between retail and retail and law enforcement when it comes to organized retail crime, trying to disrupt it and combat it here in the state of Georgia and in the Southeast. through intelligence sharing meetings, our annual conference to supporting blitzes and different things throughout the state. We have over 800 members tied into GROC right now. That's a mix of law enforcement agencies from all over the state and the Southeast, as well as prosecutors and state investigators, and of course, retailers. We're all about the retail piece. So we've got national, specialty, grocery stores, wireless, home improvement retailers, all tied into GROC. Just talking about those things that we can do here locally to make a difference when it comes to retail crime. Some of the things that we focus on are these industry trainings, like Rachel said. We have our monthly intel sharing meetings. We coordinate and help support blitz operations, the crime conference, which I'll talk about when we wrap up today. And then we also have a pretty cool Kennesaw State University GROC scholarship program that we help students that are going into criminal justice kind of get some funding to help with those internships. So that's a little bit about what GROC's about. But we have a special guest that joined Rachel and I. Miss Susan Treadaway is on. She's the district attorney for Cherokee County and for that Blue Ridge Judicial Circuit. So I wanted to give her the opportunity to kind of come on and talk about her organization, what they're doing. And she's a great partner for us at GROC. We always like to say, like, hey, if you're going to come into Georgia and you're going to commit some crimes, go up to Cherokee County and let's get you up there, because this office is gonna go after it and make things happen. So Susan, welcome. Thanks for taking a few moments today and tell us a little bit about yourself and the DA's office.
Thanks, Chad. It's great to be with all of you. And thank you to Loss Prevention Magazine and GROC for making today possible. So I've been a felony prosecutor now for about 22 years. I've been the district attorney here in the Blue Ridge Judicial Circuit for about 3.5 of those years. But what some don't know is that I actually have a prior life of retail management before I went to law school. And so what that means is my experience has given me the perspective to understand the problem, but my current role actually gives me the opportunity to do something about it. I recall working my first ORC case about 20 years ago now. Of course, it wasn't called organized retail crime at the time. I don't think the term had quite been invented. But as we know that the pattern of criminal activity was identical to what we now refer to collectively as organized retail crime. In those days, prosecutors had in Georgia the opportunity to use our RICO statute to go after these types of criminals, but our judges were resistant to viewing these cases as those that this powerful tool should be utilized for, as they considered these to be shoplifting cases, as we all have worked so many years to combat that mindset. And also, one of the issues we faced those years ago was that law enforcement very rarely worked closely enough with our retailers to be able to develop these strong cases enough that we could educate our courts about why this type of crime would bring such devastation into our communities. I was introduced to GROC, it's been about 10 years ago now, and I'm very proud to work with Chad and the GROC community to work collaboratively with our law enforcement partners to combat this very serious crime. I guess it was about 3 years ago now when I first became the district attorney. One of my goals was to create the Gang and Organized Crime Unit, which I did immediately after taking on this role, with the specific intent to incorporate aggressive prosecution of ORC within that unit. And of course, ADA Murphy is an integral part of that unit. I know that she and her team have worked hard to put together a comprehensive training module that seeks to approach organized crime with a collaborative mindset. It's critical that we get all stakeholders in the room now, whether that's physical or today virtually, so that we can all benefit from what each of us has of value to bring to the table. You're in for a real treat today, hearing from both Rachel and Chad on this topic that I know they are both very passionate about. Thank you again for your partnership. All those who are on today, if we can ever be of service to you here in Cherokee County, Georgia, as Chad said, we're always happy to hear about a case that we can bring in our jurisdiction, and we want to go after these cases as aggressively as we possibly can. I know Rachel's going to talk about some of those examples. But I'm very proud of the work that we are doing, very happy that you have that opportunity today. And as we work together to make a difference, I appreciate all of you and the hard work that you do every day.
Awesome. Thank you. We appreciate you taking some time and jumping on today. So we'll jump right into it. And we have a little bit of limited time today. We could talk for a couple hours probably about this training, but we'll kind of just give you a high level overview of what we did and how we took a look at it. And then hopefully we'll be able to do something in the future with with this group to kind of talk a little bit more about some of the behind the scenes stuff and some of the things that we were able to accomplish through it. But really, when you look at it, we kind of had a challenge that we were talking about when we first started having these discussions that, a lot of times investigators were out there doing our job. We're building these cases. We're, putting the legwork in, and the prosecutors are doing their job, taking them to trial and, trying to see them through. And there was sometimes good communication. There was sometimes, not communication at all. But we also realized that, many investigators from the retail world have never seen the inside of a courtroom. I remember my first call to court many years ago. I had no clue what to do when I walked in there, and I'm sure I failed miserably and was not doing a great job on the stand because I didn't know what to expect from the judge. I didn't know what to expect from the prosecution necessarily. I didn't know what to expect from the defense in talking to me about these cases. So we realized that a lot of times that we just kind of assume everything is going to go smoothly, and things get lost in translation from our perspective. We don't always know what the prosecutors really need to make those cases happen and run smoothly. A lot of times reports are written, we document them for what we need to do internally for our organizations. But when it comes to what the prosecution needs in that report, they may not have everything that we do. So we need to do a better job of doing that. We found there were evidence gaps when it comes to trial. It was some things that would come out that we weren't always aware of. And a lot of times witnesses and folks that were being called to kind of talk about the investigation and what they did weren't prepared for that cross-examination, kind of on the example I gave there. So that was kind of what the retail perspective was. And I'll let Rachel talk a little bit about, kind of the gap and what some of the opportunities were from the prosecutor side.
Yeah, so when you have those gaps that Chad mentioned, they do come at a cost from a prosecution standpoint. So when a case comes across my desk and I have to make a charging decision, sometimes we recognize that there's a need for additional evidence. And sometimes when we reach out, we can do our best to follow up and collect that evidence. But for retention reasons, it often happens where we're not able to get that additional evidence. We know that systems only store videos for a limited amount of time. If a booster has a cell phone and we don't get that cell phone at the time of arrest, that can be costly. So we were recognizing some of these issues that we needed to address. And when a case is missing evidence or an investigation is not conducted to its full extent, that may mean that we're not able to charge RICO or we're not able to charge organized retail theft. And that could be because we're not able to establish those required elements. And so when a case that's worthy of being charged as ORC or RICO is not able to be charged that way, that will result in lesser sentences. It could result in reduced charges, or in worst case scenario, it could potentially result in a dismissal if I can't meet my burden as the state. And so when we're in that scenario, we see the boosters getting out of custody sooner. They're not getting the prison sentences that the case calls for. And with these lesser outcomes, we understand that it can cause retailers and law enforcement to question the handling of the case and have a loss of confidence in the judicial system. So at the end of the day, we identified this gap and we identified that communication is key to bridging that gap.
Exactly. So what we did is we came up with kind of a training program that we'll talk about here for a few minutes, and really who did we have in the room to do that? So really, we thought, hey, we'd love to have our law enforcement partners, but you know what? They know what to do here, right? They go through training. They have a lot of expertise on that. So we had a couple of them in the room just to kind of give us some of their guidance, but really we focused this on our retail partners. And so we had a mix of ORC investigators in the room. We had asset protection professionals, whether it was in store, loss prevention, asset protection folks, or district or regional level managers in the room. So that was the core group that we brought in for this one-day training. and really why it worked, because it was in a real courtroom. We actually went to the city court for Woodstock and had the training there, where somebody sat behind the bench like a judge. We had the witnesses, we had the prosecution. You had to go up on the stand when we did some role playing and raise your right hand and swear and go through that whole process. So the environment made it more conducive to how we were able to present and get people the information that they need. Of course, we had the prosecutors in the room. We had a couple great prosecutors along in there with Rachel, some folks from DA Treadaway's office that came in to help support. We actually had real cases and examples that Rachel will talk here a little bit, where she kind of put together for us to do these mock interviews and these mock testimony and cross examinations with. And really, the investigators were talking about stuff they knew, even though it wasn't their case. So it kind of helped in that. And of course, bonus perk, free food and coffee. It always helps if you can give a free lunch. And people are going to come in and talk more and be involved in it. So that's kind of how we set everything up from the perspective of who was there. And so I want to let Rachel talk a little bit about the training that she developed and what that kind of looked like.
Yes, as Chad mentioned, that courtroom setting really provided that real life feel. I'm in court multiple times a week, so I'm very comfortable in court, but we recognize that many people don't like coming to court or have never been. So doing it in a courtroom setting and treating it like an actual trial really provided that real life feel. And so what we did was we typed up different incident reports that would feel like a real life case. And we had everybody read over the reports and prepare their testimony. And then we actually had participants get on the stand, and they went through a direct and cross examination. And this allowed the participants to experience how their thorough investigation matters. And when a case is not thoroughly investigated, that could result in being attacked on cross examination. And that is not fun. And we wanted the participants to experience that a little bit. Now, we didn't beat up on them too bad, but we did want them to kind of get the feel of that. And so after going through the different scenarios, we discussed adjustments that could be made, and we talked about how to ensure that investigations can be trial ready. And then we also opened it up for question and answer session, where we could talk through some more of those uncertainties or any questions about testifying or preparing to come to trial or any court hearing, really. And then we talked a little bit more about the judicial process and just walked through any questions and answers the participants had.
Yeah, it was a great day. And we kind of, along with the free food and coffee, we also promised everybody there that, hey, look, we're not going to throw anybody in the slammer for contempt of court. You're not going to get charged if you're admitting, if you're admitting anything or you lie on the stand. You can kind of get, you're not going to get your hands slapped like you would normally. So it was fun, but it was serious. And when Rachel and the folks were doing cross-examination, they were really hitting them with some good questions to see how this stuff works. So from our perspective as retailers and investigators, walking out of this thing, even for me being in the industry for quite some time, learned a lot of stuff from the day of training. And then in talking to our attendees that were there, really for us in the retail world, what it did, it changed a lot of perspective on it, helped us understand those things that we may not had a total understanding. Of course, it's not the real deal, but you got to practice to be prepared, just like a sports team is going to practice to be prepared for the game. Doing this just made us walk away stronger, the ability to kind of, know what to expect as we go through that. Another big part of it from our perspective as retailers was just that relationship. Now we have partners in Cherokee County that retail asset protection folks can reach out and talk to Rachel, can hit up Susan's office and ask questions and just have that partnership. We bring them into other meetings and trainings as well. So it helps with that confidence and kind of helps us to share, what to expect when these things happen. There's a couple of pictures that we threw down there. You can see, I can't remember who that was on the left, but, he's, being sworn in. And he's getting ready to get examined by the prosecution and by the defense attorney there. We kind of did a breakout a little bit as well, too, where the groups got to get together and kind of talk about how they were going to prepare for the case. And then, of course, just kind of an overview of the whole process from start to finish. And this is the second training that we've done with Cherokee County. We did one a couple of years ago that kind of prepared people for, case writing and reporting a little bit around RICO standards and things like that. So this was just a natural ebb and flow that we're able to kind of come in and bring this to the table of what you're going to experience when you go in there. And so I'm going to let Rachel talk a little bit about, kind of what changed from the prosecutor's perspective after doing this case or after doing this training.
So from a prosecutor's perspective, I understand that a lot of retailers and law enforcement don't have the full insight on what I need for a case and what I need to do in the courtroom. And so being able to provide that insight during this training, I think really helped to provide some insight on what I do and what I need. And so the things we talked about in the training and going through the real life scenario helps to improve report writing, helps to improve evidence collection and case file management. And when those things are improved, it makes my job as a prosecutor so much easier. And as Chad mentioned, building those partnerships, it's incredibly valuable when the DA's office is looped in early on because we can help guide you on what we need. We can help avoid any loss of evidence, like I previously mentioned, and we can help work with all parties to help build that stronger case because when we build stronger cases, we get stronger convictions. And so that early communication and partnership is really key. Not only do y'all need to know what prosecutors do, but we also need to communicate and provide to you what we need and understand what y'all do. And so it's really a team effort. It requires 3 groups of people to prosecute these cases successfully: the retailers, law enforcement, and of course prosecutors. And when you cut any one of those groups out or any one of those groups tries to go at it alone, the cases don't come out as strong and the outcomes just aren't as strong. So this training really provided the communication platform and the tools that were needed to really strengthen that communication.
Awesome. And there we are, all smiling and happy after a full day, nobody in big trouble. But we just had a great mix of folks that came in and were able to participate in the training. So here's the takeaway from all this for anybody that's on the call in other areas. And like I said, hopefully we'll get to deep dive into this a little bit more. But that issue we dealt with in the beginning, it's an easy issue to solve, right? We know that partnerships are a big part of ORCAs and the alliances that we have out there. So it just requires partnership, and we can start having these conversations. What we've done, it can be replicated anywhere. It's just you got to find that DA's office that's willing to be a part of it. And sometimes that's just a simple call to them saying, hey, I'm interested in doing something like this to kind of help in our area. And I guarantee you that a lot of the DAs out there are going to jump right on this opportunity to do that. And really, it's all about accountability at the end. It's all about these cases going from start to finish, and the people that are coming in, impacting our stores, impacting our communities, our safety and security, that they're held accountable. Our communities are protected, and really, disruption of organized retail crime doesn't end at arrest. It really ends in the courtroom by seeing these things through. So, again, it ends with accountability, and that's what's important in the whole process. And so here's some real accountability as we wrap things up. So I'm gonna let Rachel just kind of talk about 2 cases that she recently had, and then we'll kind of come back with a closing comment and we'll be done. But Rachel, talk about these cases real quick.
So these are 2 cases that I prosecuted, and these are great examples of when we're involved early, we get strong outcomes. So this first case that we have here, the Walmart Target case, these 2 individuals were stealing AirPods from Walmart and Target, and representatives from both Walmart and Target reached out to my office and asked to meet with us very early on. They had a presentation ready to go for us, and we worked together to build a prosecution-focused investigation. And then we were also able to loop in law enforcement and collaborate with them. So at the time these 2 were arrested, we were able to get a search warrant for their vehicle, search warrant for their cell phones. We were able to interview them, and we gathered some really great evidence in this case that ultimately resulted in charging them under the RICO Act. And when you have a strong case, there's really not much to argue. So these 2 pled guilty. They did not have trials, and the judge sentenced both of them to 20 years of probation with the first 10 years to serve in prison. And then the second case was a similar example. These 3 individuals were burglarizing jewelry stores. They were actually drilling holes in the roof of the jewelry stores and jumping down inside and stealing the merchandise. So a retailer in Forsyth County collaborated with local law enforcement, and the Forsyth County detective reached out to my office. He had identified this as a RICO and asked about pursuing RICO charges. And so we did that. We helped build the case together, and all of these individuals as well pled guilty. They did not go to trial, and collectively the 3 of them had sentences that totaled to 32 years in prison. So these are just examples of when investigations are strong, they result in strong outcomes.
Yep, 100%. And so that's some real accountability. All right, so what's next as we wrap things up? I'm going to do a cheap plug here. We got a couple things coming up for GROC. Of course, we got our monthly intel sharing meeting this month where locally we get together. We're going to do virtually, but we're going to get together and talk about organized retail crime and the boosters and everything that's going on. And then our big dog, August 6th at Kennesaw State University, we got our 16th annual retail crime conference. We're going back to school. Like I said, we'll be at Kennesaw State partnering with their criminal justice and sociology program. So go to our website if you want some more information on that. We'd love to see you there. Early bird registration's open. And Rachel, awesome. She's out there talking this message up. She's going to be the day before our conference. She's going to be participating at the IAI Southeast chapter, a featured speaker, really, again, talking about these things that we talked about here over the last few minutes. So really excited for her. So come on down to Georgia. The air conditioning will be on. It'll be hot in August, but we got the IAI on August 5th. And then on August 6th, we'll come and see us at GROC for our 16th annual event. And that being said, I want to just say thank you. Thank you to Rachel. Thank you to Susan, Cherokee County, all the GROC folks out there. We appreciate it. And Kevin, I'll turn it back over to you. And thank you for the time today.
Yeah,
Chad, thank
Kevin.
you. Yeah, thank you, Chad, Rachel, Susan. What a treat to have Susan on. We did not know that was going to happen. That's so cool. That was really great. And I do want to let everybody know this was a ton of information packed into this, little 20, 25-minute window. We're going to do a standalone session on this, like an hour-long session. We're gonna work out some time with Chad and with Rachel, maybe with Susan as well. And we're going to do a little deeper dive on this because this is such a valuable tool and a great example of collaboration to ensure strong prosecution on these cases. And man, it would just be so great to see this replicated in other jurisdictions. So if we can help, Jack and I are committed to seeing this one come to fruition and putting together a much deeper dive on all of the the bits and pieces here that help it all come together and made it a success, and then hopefully be able to provide that to the rest of y'all so you can look at it and go and reach out to your prosecutors and in your local jurisdictions and maybe replicate this same thing. Man, I'd love to even get in when you guys do your next one and like maybe we could record something or do something. It'd be really cool if we could build this out as a training model. But again, thank you all so much. Thanks for all the work that you do. Rachel, so great to have you on. Really, really appreciate you. Chad, as always. And Susan, thanks for taking the time. We know you've got a huge, crazy, busy schedule, and it was pretty awesome to see you on here today. So thank you guys for that.
Thank you.
Do you guys have any time to stick around if people have questions? Maybe they can put something in the Q&A for you that you might be able to answer for them.
Absolutely.
If folks
sure, we'll be
want
around.
to get a hold of you, what's the best way that they can do that?
Oh, yes. I'll put my email in the chat.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, we'll put that in there, and then they can always hit us up at info@georgiaroc.org. That's our email, but I'll put that in the chat too, as well as my contact information.
That would be great. That would be great. Yeah, and if you have some questions, because we've got such a packed schedule today, we don't have a lot of the Q&A time, but please put your questions in the chat, and Chad and Rachel are going to stick around and get you some answers on the things that they can answer. So, all right, next. Oh, wait a minute. We had next stop, but I think I hear Jack. What the heck? All right. The bus store is coming to a stop for just a moment. Oh, good. Thank God we know this officer here. John Clark's here from Clear. And John's going to join us to talk to us a little bit about Clear. Whew, thank God it was only John. Jack, I don't know if you had devices on you. So.
It looks like I'm on the wrong side of the road there. That might have had something to do with it.
Well, that might be part of it, but that's not surprising. So,
we're going for intercontinental. So left, right, we don't know.
Yeah. John, thanks for being here. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. Sorry, I'm in Bentonville, Arkansas. So technology, I'm like trying to figure out technology. So trying to figure out on the road at the same time of trying to do this all at once. So
I get, John, I'm in Varna, Bulgaria. I was a little worried that I was going to make it online today. So I'm with you.
You got me trumped on that one, buddy. You got me trumped on that one. over the pond. Here we go. So, well, thank you so much for having us, and good afternoon, everybody. Before I get into the agenda and what we got going on at Clear, I just want to start with this. Clear 2026 Las Vegas, November 9th through the 12th at the Palace Station Hotel. We've got a great show for you this year. But before I get into the agenda, let's start with this. This year at the Clear National Conference, attendees will hear the story behind the investigation and capture of El Chapo, presented by a former DEA executive who is directly involved in that operation. That presentation alone is worth the trip to Las Vegas. Trust me, the agenda committee has sat down with these folks and really put together a great program for you this year. But that is only one part of what I believe is one of the strongest conference programs Clear has ever assembled. Just a quick thank you to LP Magazine, Jack and Kevin, for the opportunity to join today. And thank you to our agenda committee, our board of directors, and our partners at the Loss Prevention Research Council and the International Supply Chain Protection Organization for helping build this year's program. The Clear Conference again will take place November 9th through the 12th in Las Vegas. This year's conference is built, as is all conferences, what Clear does best, bringing public and private sector leaders together to solve the same problems. Investigators, retailers, law enforcement, prosecutors, analysts, supply chain professionals, loss prevention leaders, financial crime investigators. These conversations rarely happen in the same room. At Clear, they always do. The agenda this year focuses on the issues affecting nearly every organization represented on this call: organized retail crime, financial crime, investigations, intelligence, interviewing, cargo theft, supply chain security. We'll have senior leadership from the Department of Homeland Security and the United States Secret Service discussing financial crimes and the growing intersection between organized crime, cyber-enabled fraud, and financial investigations. One of our feature presentations takes attendees again inside the investigation and capture of El Chapo, providing lessons from one of the most significant criminal investigations in modern history. We also hear from leadership with the National District Attorneys Association discussing the current state of organized retail crime prosecutions, emerging trends, and the challenges prosecutors are facing at the state and local level. Dave Thompson, CEO of Wicklander Zulawski, will present investigative interviewing techniques directly applicable to your investigations, interviews, and complex cases. Through our partnership with LPRC, attendees will explore signals intelligence and digital overwatch, examining how digital footprints, open source intelligence, and emerging investigative technologies can support modern investigations. We also examine how intelligence sharing and real-time collaboration continue to evolve through fusion models connecting retailers, analysts, investigators, and law enforcement partners. And because cargo theft continues to impact organizations nationwide as well as worldwide, we've developed strong cargo and supply chain content focused on current threats, investigative strategies, and operational solutions. So if you're responsible for ORC investigations, loss prevention operations, supply chain security, financial crime investigations, internal investigations, public-private partnerships, or leading investigative teams, this conference was designed for you. We are also finalizing continuing education approval through the Loss Prevention Foundation and the International Association of Interviewers, providing additional value for LPQ, LPC, and CFI credential holders. Our Clear Fusion Center initiative continues to expand, helping ORC associations and investigative teams collaborate nationally and strengthen information sharing across jurisdictions. And for our law enforcement partners, Clear is once again offering a complimentary registration for a supervisor or member of command staff to attend alongside participating officers for free. Just one final note, Several members of the CLEAR Board of Directors and I will be attending the FBI National Academy Association Annual Conference this weekend in Niagara Falls, Ontario. If you're attending, please introduce yourself. We'd welcome the opportunity to answer questions, discuss the conference, and talk about how your organization can become involved in CLEAR. Registration is now open at clearusa.org. And obviously, there's a QR code on the screen. Attendees who reserve their room today at the host hotel will receive $100 registration discount. You can also learn more about CLEAR at clearusa.org. Please secure your room now, register early, bring your team, and we look forward to seeing you in Las Vegas in November.
Great. Thank you very much, John. We appreciate you. We appreciate the update. You obviously got a ton going on, both getting ready for this conference, and you have awful lot going on with all these places that you're running around to. Vegas is great. They have all those tunnels underground between the different hotels, so you can relive the El Chapo experience there while you're there too. That'll be pretty cool.
Absolutely.
All right.
Relive the El Chapo experience. There you go.
Right? Exactly. All right. You should make that part
Thanks,
of the
guys.
part of the conference. Make it like a little side gig. All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, John. Appreciate you.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks.
Thanks, John.
All right. Next up, Jack, we're stopping in Florida.
We sure
Let's
are.
introduce our next set of speakers.
We've got Ryan Vaughn, we've got Ryan Clyburn, and we've got Paul Dentonville. Gentlemen,
I'm gonna just real quick before we bring them in, a big congratulations to Ryan and Ryan, who took home the Investigation of the Year award from the LP Hall Awards. So congratulations, Ryan and Ryan. And actually, the investigation that they won on was what we were hoping to break apart today and break down and talk about all the success points, but it's not quite over the finish line yet. So we didn't want to give away anything sensitive on this. So we've got another huge case that they worked on, and with Paul, and some really great points in driving home opportunities for more prosecution on the impact and sentencing that came out of this next case that we're going to talk about. So super excited to have you guys on here. Congratulations, Ryan and Ryan. And yeah, let's turn it over to you guys.
All right, and go ahead and share my screen here. All right, should be up. So,
not up yet. It's not up yet.
Thank you so much for having us on.
Yeah, we don't have your
Can you see
screen
my
yet.
screen?
No, not yet.
Okay.
If you go back to share and then hit the there we go. Here it comes.
There we go.
There we go. A little late.
Got it.
All right. So again, thank you for having us on. Kevin, Jack, really appreciate it. So myself, I'm Ryan Clyburn with Home Depot. I've been with them 25 years. In 2021, I was just frustrated with the malicious theft impact to our shrink line as a retailer, and really wanted to get involved in a different role, and joined the ORC unit in Tampa with the Home Depot in 2021. So saying that, you'll see a case that I put up on the screen here. It's called the Anointed One. It's really two cases in one, but they came together nicely. One of them was a long-standing seller on eBay, just selling high quantities of new inbox power tools, primarily Milwaukee. That'd be a key in this for a number of years. We had this case open and we were monitored, which I was well aware of for about 8 to 10 years. And for the course of 8 to 10 years, we had dozens of sightings, interactions, over a dozen arrests. But of course, the rest led to them being released, and then they would reoffend. So we knew we had to dig deep and do something a little different about this case. All the while, we wanted to see if there was a connection. So we in ORC at Home Depot did a deep dive. We dove into the boosters' history, the past arrest, And lo and behold, we came into a arrest document that actually mentioned one of the boosters' name is Daniel Mace, and it mentioned that his employer was a guy named Bob Dell. Bob Dell is Robert Dell, aka also known as the pastor, which was the anointed one, and some would call that a clue. So we decided to jump in and take a good look at the case and see if we could tie the two together. So when looking at it, we developed a pattern of life for the boosters, right? Jessica Wild and Daniel Mace was their names. We developed a pattern of life, got to learn their behaviors, look at their MO in the stores. They would use a large duffel bag concealed under the waistband of the female booster suspect. And then they would expose that bag only when they had the product that they wanted to conceal. Once we saw the pattern and the theft MO and the products they're taking, we really wanted to dial in and say, hey, what are they driving? Where do they live? Well, that wasn't any easier. They were driving various family member vehicles, rental vehicles, long-term vehicles, and ultimately there was a registered vehicle, which was a key to the case. Also, they did not have a residence to themselves. They would hotel hop. We had arrested them at times where they used their small children and the stroller to conceal items, all the way to when the investigation closed, they were leaving their children in a hotel, kind of, unparented for the duration of the theft sprees. So it was a concern for us for many reasons. But we developed the vehicles, and what ultimately led to us partnering with a fusion center in Tampa, Florida. After the thefts that were committed by booster suspects, Wild and Mace, there was a common factor in that they would locate or be in near proximity to the pastor's house under the cover of darkness, we call it, between 7 and say 11 at night. So we thought that was another good clue to follow up on. We conducted multiple surveillances, was able to find, in fact, that they were dropping product off. And if you see the photos on the screen, the far bottom left is actually the duffel bag that was being used to conceal stolen product. The next photo over was actually on one of the surveillances, which connected. That was in front of the fence's house, the pastor's house, in which the suspects would deliver stolen products in the evening hours. And then really from there, it took off. We were able to rinse and repeat, follow the car through some surveillance and find them bedded down at a hotel. And once we were able to secure a place where they called home, we were able to talk with the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. They were willing to give it a go, and met with Special Agent Ryan Vaughn, and he had a lot of eagerness to get into the ORC space. And really from there, he took it and was able to develop the case. So Ryan?
Hey, thank you, Ryan. And thank you to Kevin and Jack for having us on here. Just amazing opportunity to be a part of this. Yeah, so that incredible beginning investigation done by Ryan Clyburn and the Home Depot. And, we really value their partnership. And if you look at it, as the case was handed to us, we had a really, really good product and a really good starting point in the case. We had boosters identified, we had their history identified, and we even had the fence identified in that. So that as law enforcement, that gave us kind of a starting point on how to strategize where to go going forward. So one of the key factors, I think, in this case that enabled us to investigate it thoroughly and bring it to trial was collaboration with Ryan Clyburn at the beginning and throughout the case, utilizing in-store surveillance and members of his team, but also sitting down almost immediately. I think it was within the first week with Paul Dontonville and his team, and just talking about the case and the proper steps to take to ensure that they'd be able to prosecute it successfully on their end. So getting to what we did on our end as law enforcement, one of the first things that we wanted to do, we had the suspects already identified, so we wanted to put surveillance on them. So I actually want to screen share and show the audience the impact of this case. Bear with me just a minute.
There we go. We got it, Ryan.
Okay, great. So this kind of shows, this is just a little exhibit showing you where the two boosters were going throughout Florida. It was multiple counties, and the little person icon on there is just showing like a daily example of these suspects were going to multiple stores throughout the day and then constantly returning to the pastor's house each time at the end of the day. We did multiple surveillance operations and we're able to see this live in person. Um, and the fact that it was multiple counties, I'm going to go ahead and return it to the regular screen. The fact it was multiple counties, um, I think it's important that this type of case utilize a state agency like the Florida Department of Agriculture because we had statewide jurisdiction. We can go into other counties. We can hold them accountable for crimes they commit throughout the state. So that was a huge part of it, being able to see them commit the crimes and then kind of verifying some of the things that the Home Depot did on their preliminary investigation, seeing um, Jessica Wild and Daniel Mace's lifestyle and seeing it for ourselves, verifying where they live, verifying that they made these drops to the pastor's house, which we also verified with electronic surveillance in the area. Huge part of the case was the final surveillance operation where we actually arrested Daniel and Jessica during a live theft. I think a massive part of it was talking with Jessica and developing her and later Daniel as cooperating witnesses in the case. So I remember when we arrested Jessica, she had this emotional moment where during the arrest, she was very concerned about her kids because, as Clyburn had told you, they would leave these kids in this motel room for an entire day period and go out and commit theft. So she was kind of concerned about her kids and maybe what would happen to them if she went off to jail. And then she revealed at the onset of the arrest, she was really upset about Daniel Mace and his control over her. So during an interview with her, I think a huge factor in developing her into a cooperating witness was just building rapport. And during that interview, she actually confessed to the whole racketeering scheme and how her and Daniel became involved in this from the beginning all the way to the time that they met the pastor, how they committed the thefts, how often they took it to the pastor and so on. And then we had other meetings with her as well, and eventually a actual sit-down proffer with Paul and his team.
Hey, Ryan,
You
can
know,
I jump in here? I mean, something that I wanted to point out is, in a situation like this, like we all experience on a regular basis, right? So now law enforcement, Home Depot, they've identified, these bad actors, these boosters who have been stealing for 10 years, right? So prosecutor comes in, we can flip those people, but ultimately we don't want to just flip those individuals. We want to go after kind of the head of the snake. And here that was, Pastor Robert Dell along with his wife. And so in order to do that, I think what was a really valuable piece here was the fact that, Home Depot had done such a great job documenting their encounters with Jessica and Daniel over the years. And so when we finally flipped Jessica and Daniel, I'm able to go back with Home Depot, get their reports, and Ryan was able to retrieve those, and then use those reports to kind of, bolster her testimony and to corroborate her testimony, and also, have her recall a little bit better what was going down when it was going down, and essentially paint this bigger picture about, the criminal organization and the criminal enterprise here and the length of time was going on. Because without that, Jessica Weil and Daniel Mace, who were on, a boatload of oxys, right, would not have been able to recall a lot of what they testified to. So definitely kudos to Home Depot for, going through this and documenting all their interactions, even if it didn't result in an arrest or an interaction with law enforcement. We had that report in the future to then, work to strengthen the prosecution. Sorry to interrupt, Ryan.
no, I appreciate you adding that part, and I completely agree. I think Home Depot's outstanding work on the preliminary part of this and documenting, Daniel and Jessica were arrested numerous times, numerous times, and it just shows these people don't stop until you hold them accountable with serious charges. So Daniel and Jessica kept bonding out, returning to their lifestyle and delivering things to the pastor. So as law enforcement, in collaboration with Home Depot and the prosecutor's office, I mean, we're trying to get as much evidence as we can to get this thing to trial, and we want to corroborate that evidence with witnesses. So we knew about the boosters, we knew about the pastor, we knew how we were doing it, And we knew that there was drugs involved too, that Daniel and Jessica were heavy drug users, that they were using the profits they received from selling the property to the pastor to continue their drug habit. And then Pastor Dell and his wife were also drug users as well. So we were able to use her as a witness to corroborate, things that we already knew in the case. And then when we seized their electronics and eventually we did a search warrant at the pastor's house, we gained other electronics, did forensic analysis on that, and corroborated pretty much everything that Jessica told us. So I think that's the highlights for me. And, that just kind of enabled us to give it a really nice packaged case off to Paul so that he could prep it for trial.
Yeah, I think Ryan, the other thing that was a big factor here is, right, Home Depot comes to law enforcement, and as a prosecutor and as someone who's done, a number of these cases, including in very conservative communities, after a jury comes back guilty on some of the big ORC cases, I've received feedback such as, we felt like the retailers and their asset protection teams were actually too involved in surveillance and in some of the acts that you would expect from law enforcement. And so a really good thing in this case is that, Ryan came along, Clyburn from Home Depot, engaged Ryan Vaughn, and really, took not a back seat, but kind of a concurrent seat with Ryan Vaughn, provided the assets and the tools that perhaps, they had at their disposal that law enforcement did not. But ultimately, I needed to make sure when we're presenting this case to a jury that, we can point to law enforcement and say the lead in this case was law enforcement. The lead was not this private entity, this billion-dollar company, because frankly, people don't love that. People don't love the fact that, perhaps, even though you are well equipped, they don't want to hear that a retailer and the police for the retailer essentially, right, is the one out there front and center. They want to hear law enforcement, cops in the community that are paid by the taxpayers are the ones kind of leading the charge. And then retailers are kind of playing that supporting role. Ryan, was there something else on that you want to talk about or no?
I think for the most part I was finished. I think the one other thing I think I'll share too, and that we didn't really go over is, the theft. Actually, what they were stealing was power tools. It was new in box power tools. Through the method of concealing it in this large bag, Jessica would stuff it down her pants, walk into the store, pull it out, conceal all the tools in it, and then they would leave. And Clyburn, in the beginning, he was able to confirm this through some loss prevention associates were actually able to see this live. I think including Ryan over the years, and then they were able to, through their investigation, find out that Robert Dell was selling this mass amount of new in-box power tools on e-commerce, eBay, and other platforms. And then during my investigation, I corroborated that through a subpoena to eBay, which kind of led, I was able to hand that off to Paul so he could show that during trial that this was not an isolated incident. This wasn't even a small time thing. This was years and years and years of sales and really a criminal enterprise between these people that resulted in millions of dollars and loss to Clyburn. And so I think that's all I have.
Yeah, and then something that we found on electronic devices was interesting in that, of course, nowadays folks are selling items in all sorts of platforms. I want to share my screen here. One of the places that it was shared, Vaughn, can you see that okay?
I can see it.
Great. We got
it, Paul. We're good.
Great. Facebook Marketplace. And so as you can see here, on the left, we have Robert Dell, Pastor Dell, along with his wife. And then we have, these postings on Facebook Marketplace where essentially Robert Dell posted the screenshot from Home Depot and what they retailed for. So in this case, it was a DeWalt rotary drywall tool. And the fact that, he had listed it or sold it for around $85 and it retailed at the time he sold it for $139. So I think this is kind of a good example of, when we're going into a prosecution, I'm going to need also to know the retail value from our retailer, as well as I think I'd recommend folks be prepared to share, cost of goods, right? What better evidence to say that, there's a presumption that these items were stolen when we have Home Depot coming in saying, yeah, we as this humongous corporation can purchase this item for X dollars. Meanwhile, our boosters, I think in this case, she was selling this particular item for $20 to Robert Dell. He was selling it online for $85 and at retail for $139. So there's presumptions of the law in Florida. I'm sure in many other states that that's a heck of a deal, and especially a heck of a deal when these folks were going to see our main bad guy here every night, 7 nights a week, almost every night, turning around, going to use the money to purchase pills. The other thing I wanted to kind of highlight is, obviously we all know that judges, jurors, right? I think the feedback you probably get from prosecutors generally is, well, isn't this just simple theft? Isn't this, is this really that big of a deal? And so what I can tell you is, when a case like this comes together and we can show 10 years of history, multi-million dollars, we can show product, in this case was shipping from eBay to across the world. I mean, it was shipping as far as, the African continent, the Middle East. The question for the jurors is like, why can this guy in your local community buy power tools from these individuals and sell them for a fraction of what they can be sold for at Home Depot and not know what the heck is going on? And so I think it also works to our benefit when we put these cases together to show the volume, the money, to really convince the court, right? Because our judges are the ones ultimately that are folks that are going to impose the sentence. And so if we do these big cases, this was a racketeering case, and we spend this time, energy, taxpayer dollars, and the results of that sentencing is something less than optimal, it's not going to send the correct message in the community. In this case, what we had is a judge, and we forget this often, a judge who clearly had interactions with Home Depot, clearly saw the progression of power tools moving from front and center on the shelf to locked up and secured, right? And we forget that judges are people too, right? So the judge's reaction to this case was pure outrage. After we presented our case during an argument for a judgment of acquittal, I mean, the judge frankly responded for me, right? He said, well, they did this, and this was outrageous, and at sentencing, guess what? Well, it was a similar reaction. He was almost more outraged than I think myself, Ryan Clyburn, and Ryan Vaughn were about the facts of this case. And he sentenced Robert Dell to an appropriate sentence by far of 30 years in prison. But that was also a great feeling, right? It's a great feeling to see, listen, judges care about it, jurors care about this case. And because of jobs that are done like Home Depot and our local law enforcement, that helps us kind of bolster these types of cases and get an appropriate sentence. So that's kind of what I wanted to share. I don't know if Clyburn or Vaughn wanted to share anything else.
For me, it was mentioned earlier, just about having the trifecta, and coming in early and bringing in and being counseled by, a statewide prosecutor, and just informed of how to charge these individuals, just really kept the investigation on a narrow path, the straight path, the right path. And, just super grateful for the amazing state that I live in, work in, but for the council from Donville and support on. So just really appreciate the partnership.
Same. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. That was a
Thanks, guys.
remarkable case, and kudos for not only being able to bring it all together into fruition, but to be able to get the sentencing and get the maximum that you were able to get. Obviously, showed that you guys put together an absolutely magnificent case. You dotted your I's, you crossed your T's on that one, and
Great
it paid
partnerships
off.
there too, Kevin.
Great partnerships. Great partnerships. All right. Well, thank you guys. Thank you, Ryan and Paul. Jack, we're up for the next stop here while you're setting that up.
Okay.
We are making our next stop here in North Carolina, in Raleigh. We did have a little bit of a snafu because our prosecutor and our contact here did get called into court today. So we actually recorded the session, but we still have it. So we do have it up for you next. I can tell you that we are going to go a few minutes over. So just to let everybody know that in advance. And if obviously if you don't stay on for the whole thing, you'll get the link when this is over, and you'll be able to go back and listen to the parts that you missed. So.
All right, Kevin, as I'm setting this up, I did want to point out for everybody, I wanted everybody to notice that in honor of our sponsor letters, O, R, and C, I wore my Cookie Monster colored LP magazine shirt because, C was for cookie before it was for crime. So just wanted to make sure that we pointed that out.
Nice job, Jack.
All right.
I did not notice that earlier, but thank you for calling that out.
All right, this afternoon we have with us Chuck Spahas, who's General Counsel and Legislative Liaison with the North Carolina Conference of District Attorneys, and our good friend Elizabeth Robinson, who's the Senior Vice President of the North Carolina Retail Merchants Association and CORCA. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you tell us a little bit about yourselves? Chuck, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I appreciate y'all having us here today. Yeah, you explained pretty well what I do. I represent the district attorneys this time of year during the legislative process, and work with them to develop and to support the issues facing prosecutors and the district attorneys in North Carolina.
Very good. Elizabeth.
Thank you. And likewise, I've been with the North Carolina Retail Merchants Association for just over 20 years. A lot of that function is in the government relations space, working at the state legislative building. And then in 2015, we took over the management of the Carolinas Organized Retail Crime Alliance, which I manage alongside Jessica Yovanovich on our team.
Well, welcome to both of you. It's great having you both with us today.
And as we like to remind people, Elizabeth, you guys are the OG CORCA. Before the CORCA legislation, there was Carolina ORCA. So
thank you for that shout out.
Yes, absolutely. You guys started it. So before we talk about the legislation, you guys have built a remarkably durable partnership among the retailers, the prosecutors, law enforcement, policymakers. How did that partnership really come together, and why is that so effective in the Carolinas?
Thank you. Yeah, NCRMA has worked alongside the Conference of District Attorneys, along with the Sheriff's Association, Chiefs of Police, SBI legislators for many years, even predating CORCA. I go back from our legislative advocacy experience. Our President General Counsel, Andy Ellen, and myself have both been lobbying for over 20 years, over 50 years combined through the Retail Association. And I think one thing that's made North Carolina successful is that we work not to develop legislative solutions in a vacuum. A lot of times these ideas originate with the retail investigators, the asset protection professionals, or law enforcement officers who bring these ideas, dealing with these crimes every day. And then our role is really helping bring those stakeholders together, but translating those real world challenges into legislative solutions. And that's where we're bringing those ideas to Chuck and to the Conference of District Attorneys to seek out their input and advice before we proceed. So it really just, I think, comes down to a lot of trust and credibility we've been able to establish over the years.
Elizabeth, North Carolina's Organized Retail Crime Alliance is somewhat unique. Can you explain how NCRMA and CORCA work together and why that model has been so successful for us?
Yeah, we can. In 2015, I mentioned that NCRMA took over. We were looking to expand our Retail Loss Prevention Association within our membership, and CORCA.org was being run through a local collaboration of law enforcement out of Charlotte. So we joined forces. We established CORCA in 2015 to be managed through our charitable foundation, with the idea that we would be a forum for information sharing and also host an annual conference. NCRMA provides the administrative function for CORCA, but also provides the advocacy arm in North Carolina. And then, like I said, CORCA really provides the boots on the ground. They're on the front lines of these issues every day to help us understand how organized retail crime is evolving, where those existing statutes might be falling short, and where there might be practical challenges. And so all that is really invaluable to know that those legislative proposals are grounded in real world experience.
You know, the relationship, Elizabeth, between NCRMA and the Conference of District Attorneys where Chuck is, I think that goes back, what, 2 decades? How has that relationship helped shape North Carolina's approach? And Chuck, you know, I'll ask you, because you've got that relationship with them. How does that shape your approach to what you guys are doing with ORC?
Yeah, sure. So the perspective that we get from this alliance and from, as Elizabeth said, hearing from the boots on the ground is really important for the prosecutors, kind of in two arenas. I mean, the district attorneys know how to put their cases together, try a case. But how those cases being tried, those defendants being taken out of circulation and brought to justice, what impact is that actually having or not having on the retail community? So that perspective about what we're prioritizing or should be prioritizing is a really important factor for our DAs themselves to hear when they're prosecuting these cases and dealing with them. From the perspective of a policy standpoint, from moving forward and evolving our law, I think we've seen it truly develop over the last 20 years. And significantly, I can say I've been here for the last 6 years. We've made some giant strides during that period of time. It's called organized retail theft for a reason, right? The criminals were organized. They're evolving. It's important from a policy standpoint, for us to adjust to and respond to that evolution. And I think we've seen through the cooperation of the two groups and working with our General Assembly, speaking with one voice, that we've actually started to have some real impact on the retail establishments and protection of that industry in this state.
Elizabeth, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. And I would say, yeah, it's been a very long and successful partnership. I think back, our first ORC law was in 2007. And we knew it was going to be, we had ideas coming to us from, at the time, our Retail Loss Prevention Association, and we knew it was going to be really important to have the district attorney's blessing and buy-in and whatever we were trying to accomplish, and worked alongside their leadership at the time to pass what then was an omnibus bill. And then that following spring, there was a gentleman, Mo McKnight, who at the time was at Lowe's Foods, who had been very involved in that process. He and I traveled actually by ferry to the DA's annual conference to talk about each provision of the legislation, practical applications, and kind of have that conversation, which was so helpful. And so down the road, after we launched CORCA, Kimberly Overton, who at the time was the chief resource prosecutor, now executive director of the conference, actually launched. She kicked off our first conference, a CORCA, as the keynote in 2016. And since then, we've had presentations from prosecutors 8 out of 10 years at the conference, including Chuck. And so that collaboration really ramped up, I think, with bringing on CORCA. And then when Chuck came on board, we really began this collaborative process each year, and now really are working annually on what we're able to accomplish together, which has been amazing.
That is amazing. And some more OGs mentioned there too. Boy, Mo McKnight, it goes back a few years, man. He was an icon with Lowe's Food and stuff, right?
Absolutely.
Great guy. And Kimberly Overton too, because she's been around a little while and she's done some great stuff for us too.
You know, you look at that relationship since right around 2021, North Carolina has enacted a lot of organized retail crime legislation. I think you've done so just about every year, right? What do you think has driven the momentum between these legislative successes that you've had, and how NCRMA, prosecutors, retailers, and law enforcement have all worked together to move these ideas from concepts and into law? Chuck, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I like to say, as you've outlined, our successes do speak volumes. We start this process way before the legislature comes to town. I mean, we are meeting in the background in the fall before session starts in the spring about the successes we've had off of previous years' legislations and what are we seeing evolving? What can we do to going forward so that by the time our General Assembly is actually ready to hear legislation, we are there prepared with our most recent proposal that is responsive to what we're hearing now and what we need to respond to now. And we like to be one of the first things that gets drafted and dropped when the legislature starts is a combined piece. And we've had some real success over the last 5 or 6 years by taking that approach, picking something meaningful each session that we can all get behind and getting it done.
I mean, I would agree with, everything Chuck laid out that a lot of that work is, that consistent drumbeat going on behind the scenes at all times from the legislative side. And then, like I talked about earlier, a lot of these ideas, didn't necessarily come from the two of us talking to each other or out of a conference room, but from those retail investigators or law enforcement who identify where there might be gaps, bring those concerns forward. And because we've been able to build those relationships at the legislative building, we have now natural advocates and supporters that are always looking to us asking, is there something else we need to do to help? And I think about, and I know Chuck may talk more specifically about some of the pieces of legislation we've worked on together since 2021, but one comes to mind as we're talking about this, that I think in 2024, we already were working on legislation on a clarification on transferring the property to the fence within the organized retail crime statute. And Chuck in particular was focused on some money laundering statute. But then I think come December, before the legislature came in January, local law enforcement brought to us through CORCA and said, there's a new court decision. They got the interpretation right, but we may need to look at the statute. And it was on creating, affixing, and presenting a price code all being one offense instead of 3 separate offenses. And because we already had laid that groundwork, we were able to come in and quickly get that addressed in that next session too.
Well, it takes a village, right? Put all this together, but every village still needs leaders.
Yeah, and one recurring theme is that aggregation, right? You've got aggregation and sort of a cross-jurisdictional prosecution angle to a lot of these reforms. Why are those tools so important, Chuck, to combating ORC?
Yeah, what we've seen is quite frankly, the organized crime does respond to aggressive prosecution and significant sentences. And what we've been able to do with aggregation is the concept of these criminals will actually know what the thresholds are in the statutes, whatever state they're in, and they will literally steal right up to it and then move on to the next place. So that if they're getting caught or their persons committing the thefts or larceny are getting caught, then they're getting charged with the misdemeanors. But they might hit 10 establishments in one day in the single outlet mall. So what we've been able to do with aggregation is, at least when the victim is common, and in our statute within a period of 90 days, we can bring all of those just under the threshold of making it a felony together and make it a felony. So that's been huge. It allows us to also apply, we're a structured sentencing state. So typically larcenies are, from a punishment standpoint, are about value, and it allows us to build the values collectively because that's the value that the victims have suffered, and then bring that an appropriate charge. The other thing that organized retail theft has learned is venue and the concepts of venue, and that they can jump from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and in the past been able to escape a organized crime type of prosecution, because once you move into a new county, into a new prosecutorial district, then those cases get treated separately and not brought together. So two of the themes across almost every statute that we've been into or asked to change in the last 5 or 6 years has had either aggregation or a broadening of venue that lets you bring any theft that's related. So particularly if it's organized crime and you can tie it to that organization, then we can cross those jurisdictional lines and bring those all in one prosecution. And that's been huge to us.
Yeah, that is huge. What's that been like for the retailers, Elizabeth?
Oh, I mean, yeah, that is a huge asset to have because I mean, like Chuck just laid out, these organized retail crime rings are not just going to one store and location. They're hitting all of these. And with North Carolina's geographic location, we have intersections of 85, I-85, 95, 40. And so it's, kind of easy access points to be able to hit a lot of locations in a short amount of time. And so having that aggregation has been tremendous.
Yeah, you've got to come in both ways between going, east west and north south. You guys are a bit of a gateway there for a lot of opportunity and cross jurisdictional crime, right? So
Makes it great for locating distribution centers, but also ORC rings. So
yeah,
There you go.
right, right.
There you go. Legislation, rightly so, often gets all the headlines, but as we started to talk about before, I think relationships are really built between those legislative sessions and everything that goes on there. How do you feel that you've helped sustain that whole collaboration between all the different partners that you guys work with?
Well, I think you talked about it's a team effort, and I think it absolutely has been over the years. Speaking from kind of the NCRMA and CORCA side of things, you see that timeline and how things have ramped up, both with us working collaboratively with Chuck, but also with the input we're getting from Carolina's Organized Retail Crime Alliance, because I think they've seen the success and they see the value of our success that we've had legislatively, and that it's a place where they can bring ideas and maybe see some resolution to those. And so, the conference itself offers an opportunity for those practitioners to learn from each other, to share case examples, to share some of those challenges. And we've had that long history of prosecutor participation in the conference each year. But it's a lot of times those conversations that really become the foundation for those future legislative improvements. So, CORCA kind of keeps us at NCRMA apprised of what those emerging trends are and what those operational realities are. A lot of those started at, the end of a CORCA meeting or a retailer sharing a case example. And then a lot of times we're then taking those to Chuck at the conference to say, let's talk through these ideas and see, if we're able to navigate a legislative change here. And I think when those ideas come from the professionals that are doing the work every day, it really strengthens our credibility at the legislative building too, with legislators. And I think that's why they're willing to come back each year and ask how they can help and how they can work to improve. And then we also turn around and recognize those legislators for their help. At the conference, we have legislative champion awards where we recognize those bill sponsors for the work that they've done, because it is a heavy lift, and then continue to maintain those partnerships and engagement with all of our stakeholders, with the obviously with Chuck and the Conference of District Attorneys, but also I mentioned the sheriffs and police departments and our other state and federal agencies that we're coordinating with.
Absolutely. Chuck, what do you think? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree with Elizabeth. We've built on our credibility and effectiveness in the past that has turned into almost an expectation that we are there at the beginning of a legislative session with the newest thing that we need to respond to how this crime is evolving. And it's not just this communication and cooperation is not just about effective legislative action. The importance of us making what we're learning from our retailers and what's going on in the world part of our continuing education, so that our prosecutors, our on the line everyday prosecutors that are handling cases, are seeing this and seeing what we've accomplished as far as new tools, how to apply the new tools, and what impact that's having. So making that part of the annual education of our prosecutors, and training, quite frankly, our prosecutors and our retail theft investigators together does further advance, what we've been able to accomplish. It builds better relationships and flow of information between the prosecutors and investigators doing it. And quite frankly, we develop best practices that way that then get shared throughout the state for our other prosecutors and investigators to see. So it has had a very deep impact on the actual prosecution, effective prosecution in the state.
So you're not just prepared, okay? You're also all on the same page by the time that you get to those sessions, right? And that really helps put it together and give that united front that you need to make sure that things move forward, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you guys are the gold standard when it comes to this type of collaboration. The success that you've had in legislative efforts in the Carolinas is should be a role model for a lot of the other areas of the country. I mean, there are parts of the country that we interact with where they're just struggling to get that type of training, Chuck, that you talked about. That they're just to teach the prosecutors what ORC is and isn't, right? If we took that gold standard and we said, let's package this, let's share this, what would you guys recommend as the opportunity to strengthen, these relationships? How can we take this model that you guys have put together and replicate it in other areas of the country? What would be your advice to folks who are trying to do that?
I think a lot comes down to relationships, building those relationships and making sure those are long standing so that, you're not just coming when there's an ask, but that you've built these long standing relationships over time. That's been our experience. But I would also say for states where there is an organized retail crime alliance, if you haven't already, to engage your state retail association and other organizations that have established legislative expertise, because that is a skill set and there are relationships built within those organizations that are already in place. And successful advocacy is going to require both having that subject matter expertise that comes out of the ORCA, but also the ability to navigate the legislative process. And so I would just encourage building those relationships as well. And then turn it to Chuck.
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, involving the prosecutors early, allowing us to participate in kind of evaluating and formulating what our response needs to be, focusing on practical, enforceable legislation. I think you look back over the history of what we've done and you see us addressing definitions, creating new tools, increasing punishment where appropriate. We talked a little bit about aggregation and venue provisions, bringing that practical, no nonsense, this is what needs to happen to the legislature in a format that they can easily understand. It works, and you build on those successes over time. You're not going to solve this problem overnight, but you can, as I think we've established, you can come in almost every year, paying attention to what's changing, what needs to be tweaked to address it, and have success year after year.
Well, the one comment that I might add to all this part of the conversation is that in a role like Chuck has, you're not just somebody that's putting together all this legislation and so forth. You really have to be an educator, and you have to have a certain skill set that comes with being able to share that information with others in a way that they are able to, absorb and understand and then apply. And I absolutely agree with you, Kevin. I think we've got one of the best groups in the country here that we're talking to today. So thank you both very much for being part of our conversation today.
Hands down.
Thank you. We appreciate being here.
Yeah,
thank you very much. Thank you, Chuck.
Yes,
we
sir.
appreciate you. We appreciate having you on the Summer Success Tour here. We couldn't not stop. We couldn't call it the Summer Success Tour and not stop in the Carolinas and talk to y'all because clearly you guys have defined what success means in legislation in ORC. So thank you both again. All right. That takes us to the close of our little bus tour for today. We want to thank everybody for joining us. We want to thank our sponsors, Genetec and Pinkerton. Thank you so much again. Please check them out. Learn a little bit more about what Genetec and Pinkerton do. Two great solution providers, huge support for the magazine and all that we do here, and we really appreciate them, and we appreciate you taking the time to learn a little bit more about them. Thank you to the LPF. Remember, if you're LPC, keep track of this webinar because you just got 2 CEU credits that you better put on your profile towards your recertification. There's that QR code for Loss Prevention Magazine. Subscribe for free. Bring it on the bus. Come for the rest of the ride with us as we head off to points unknown. Jack, I think that's it. Let's start the bus up here. There we go. All right. The bus has started. Let's go.
Okay. All right.
That ends our summer success tour. I want to thank everybody and hope everybody will stay safe. Jack, anything to add?
Another great session this week. Well, see y'all soon. Stay safe out there.